Hello guys, it's been a little bit since I've had enough time or felt like I had enough information to do one of these videos. The first one was on Loki, but this one is a little bit more specific. I feel like with Loki's I nailed down what sort of the ideal build was going to be for him, at least for the time being. But this one, the build is going to be a bit more specific, and if you recognize this frame, which many of you that are experienced will, this is Saryn. And I'm going to be showing off a build that I like to call Exterminator Saryn. It is a speedrunning build for lower level content. And the effect of it is gained by using these mods, or very similar mods. And you get about the same duration and strength as you normally would, just with base nothing, a tad bit lower. But the importance here is the max efficiency and the enormous, absolutely enormous range of Saryn's abilities now. Plus Energy Siphon. Energy Siphon is amazing with this build. Even though you usually won't be running out of energy, in the case that you get drained, Energy Siphon helps quite a bit. Especially in the lower level content where damage isn't really your big concern. So, what the hell does this build do? Well, Saryn's 4... Miasma is a corrosive ability, which means that it's incredibly good against Grineer, which are the most dangerous faction, and it is good against the rest of the factions, and it is the element that you would generally want to be using against Ancients, and all of the other enemy types that are not the new Juggernaut pretty much instantly die from corrosive damage of this magnitude if they are normal infested enemies, and then the Corpus are quite weak aside from nullifiers, but you will easily be able to deal with them with your weapons, and it should not be much of a threat. So the build focuses on just spamming 4 in every area that you come into, and since your range is so hilariously large, you just kill everything there. It's incredibly useful for alerts that you want the reward of very quickly. So first, is that Gravitas on Mars a exterminate? It just so happens that I got very, very lucky. Let's do this extermination, because it's kind of what she's for with this build. Obviously, Saryn does have other uses, and she can be very, very tanky, especially with her regenerative molt card. But in this build, we're not focusing on being tanky because everything in your vicinity is basically going to evaporate. Hopefully there are enough enemies. It's pretty good. Your range is at max, so you'll notice enemies that far away are getting evaporated pretty much instantly. And since your 4 only costs 25, and you're constantly, like, getting more energy, it's usually not a big problem, except when these guys are around. I still don't have enough energy. Usually someone has dropped energy by now. There we go. And enemies basically just melt from this. So like the basic gist is that you're just kind of running forward and then hitting 4, and then everything just dies around you in like huge swathes. And whenever you're running an extermination mission, like enemies, they're gone now. I'm actually getting a really low amount of energy. Usually, like some enemies would have dropped it already. I guess I spammed a little too much at the very beginning, which is fine. It's also very effective with the Sinoid Gamma Core because it can give you energy back. And obviously teeny tiny groups of enemies you're going to want to shoot, just because that's more effective. Weird. That's the first time I think I've ever seen a Corpus actually on an elevator. That must be happenstance. Okay, and like the goal is just like basically get in the middle of a room and then everyone melts. It's very effective. You kind of want to be at like the middle of the enemies. Having carrier also is incredibly useful whenever you're doing this. because he can help you get more energy. Also, I'm leveling the Skindo Prime right now. Finally got my hands on it. So I would suggest a faster melee weapon for this, generally like the Kogake or a polearm of some description. Because breaking open crates is a source of energy as well. And whenever you get energy screwed like this, it's the reason that you have your energy siphon. Because no matter what, you will at least get some of them off. I don't think I've ever been so energy screwed. Just ever. Like, even when you're energy screwed, it's pretty effective. Obviously, bringing energy restores makes this much more reliable, because you're constantly doing it no matter what at that point. Instant killing everyone in the room, and usually outside of a room, because you don't need line of sight for this ability to work. This does work with a couple of other frames, but because she casts her 4 like so fast, and because her 4 does such like high damage, even if some of it is over time, it still works out that I think that Saryn is the best at this. It's worth noting that you do need to be fairly good at being able to navigate levels quickly, or else this falls apart a little bit, because Saryn is slower than you might want. Which is also why I'm wearing this helmet, but it's an arcane helmet, so obviously I cannot count on everyone having that, unfortunately. Stragglers. Come on, where's the other 2? Hold still. And this is a Skindo, so going up here is not easy. There we go. Oh, that was actually a pretty poor run. I got pretty energy screwed. It's actually tad a higher level, and it's Grenier, which happens to be the element this is most effective on, unlike the Corpus. And I need to get used to shooting them because I'm using a slower melee weapon. Oh, it's actually been quite some time since I've played as Saryn, just because I've been testing Excalibur quite a lot. Energy right away. Awesome. Don't knock me down. That's the bad news. Oh, okay, no more enemies this way. Now at least I have decent starting energy. Entire room pretty much eliminated. Enemies slightly outside my range. Okay, nothing in here. Actually got a really low enemy count this time. Kind of weird. Also, it's worth mentioning that if you run a party of 4 Saryns doing this, this works in high-level content, like, pretty effectively. No energy from all those enemies. Is that what we're saying right now? Thought there was an enemy over there. I'm going crazy. Giant areas like this where enemies can hide are actually a bane of this build. More for tight ships, really. You mother... Oh, and you're the one that gives me energy, of course. Thank you for my gun back. You know, I used to not, like, ever get my gun taken by them. Like, it would just roll low. Now I feel like it's just all the time. They love the Marlock. They want it back. They want to steal it back for themselves. Alright, this area is done. No energy from them. Oh, of course, this guy gives me energy. Eximus. Oh, his thing still went off. He died, though. There we go. Now I've got enough energy. Don't lock the doors, please. Thank you. Alright, man. Come on now. Saryn's one is actually amazing on these Manics. Yep, he died. And with the kind of duration this build kicks out, like, it's pretty, like, you could put one on a Manic and then just kind of walk away and it would be trivial. Or you could stack your ones in order to just make them just die. Just eventually, you know. That's worth that. Ooh, good. And, like, that's what you want. You just want one enemy to drop an orb, like, every time you do a group. Because whenever one or two enemies, like this is what usually happens, where you're getting, like, one for every group that you hit 4 in, or more than that, instead of getting, like, mana fucked, like I have been. And, like, you don't even have to go down side passages usually. You can just kind of run straight for the exit. And, of course, right at the end there, I did very well on my energy rolls. I did about normal, not even very well. Yeah, it generally does very high damage, and it's survivable. Like, you can kind of just let yourself get shot for a large majority of time. But let's talk about some things that you can sub into this build to avoid certain problems with it. My setup that I use is pretty basic because I generally only use it when I'm going in a group to clear out weaker minions. So, some things that you can substitute in order to make up for certain areas that it's sort of lacking in. You can substitute Stretch, which will give you a bit more limited range, but you can use mods like Rage, and whenever you use Rage, this eliminates some of the ability to get screwed on energy, which is okay. I prefer having more range so I can do it over a wider area, of course, and because I usually run this in a group, more energy siphons means more energy for me. So it's usually not a problem, but it is a card that is really good in this build, so if you're willing to sacrifice the range for it, it's very nice. So that is a good option. Other things that you could possibly substitute for really, really low-level missions, you could substitute Blind Rage for a number of things, really. Anything that you find is a good, let's say, tech card. Like, if you want to swap Blind Rage for enemy sense, let's say, for radar purposes, so you know where everyone is and that type of thing. Or if you want to sub Blind Rage for maybe Flow, so you have more casts if they're very weak enemies, and you know you're going to have energy, and there's going to be a lot of them, say like in an Infested Defense, for example. That is a good sub-in for that stuff. Obviously, there is a quick-thinking Rage build with Saryn that can be used fairly effectively with her regenerative Molt. But that's not really what I want to go over right now, although I will go over that probably in a future build video for Tank Saryn, which is a thing that exists, actually, which is quite surprising considering her fairly low armor, but she is the holder of the highest health pool, so she's not to be taken lightly. But that kind of wraps up what I wanted to show off, which is just the Saryn that can walk into a level and kill everyone until quite high levels, really. Fairly high. This build is also really good for farming Kappa, which is where you would generally level up, because you can kind of just sit in one space and hit 4. So it's quite good for that. If you want to take a bunch of weapons that you do not have leveled, and then you hit 4, and then everyone dies, and they become goo. Quite good for that as well. But I hope you guys like this video. I know it's a bit short. Might actually release 2 things today. I don't know. Don't know how I feel about this. Regardless, hope you guys liked it. If you want to see more videos like this, please suggest a frame. Preferably, if there is a build that you've heard about that you don't know what it means or something like that, I would be happy to do a video like that. I would prefer to do popular builds like this one that people use a lot to clear missions on alert and for events and things like that. So a name of a build would be very useful if you would like to make a suggestion, such as, for example, Slova, which is Slow Nova. That's a build that everybody's pretty much got a handle on at the mid-level, or at least they've like seen that somewhere. I might actually make that my next video because that build is widely popular. So yeah, actually, you know what? That is the next thing. But if you guys have other suggestions of popular builds that you want to see, how they work and why they work and what they're for, please let me know, and I will do them. Because I like doing things that I know are needed or wanted, I guess. I don't know. Regardless, thank you for watching. I love you all.